change this to 2020 and all that, and then went ahead to do a select statement on my table. Okay. I'm coming. Just a moment, please. Okay. So what I did next was actually this: to create a table, a unified table where all the data is joined, where all the data are joined together: 2020, 2019, 2018 sales. So it could actually, if I want to look through the old data from 2018 to present on the table. So since I know that, since we know that the tables are 2020, 2019, 2018 tables are the same. Can you still hear me? I hope I'm not the only one just talking to myself.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then. Thank you. Okay, since we know that 2020, 2019, 2018 data, the tables are practically the same. If you look through it, you can see they're the same. The only difference there is that the dates is just what's different. So the data types for each column are the same and everything, and we have equal number of columns. Now, since we already know that, we can do a union to just compact, to append everything together on top of each other, like stacking the table on top of each other to then create a holistic table. So that's what I did here. So select all from 2020, then add 2019 to it, add this one to it, and then use this whole select statement from all this to create a new table as all sales data. So that's during the whole duration. So since I have that, then I now started doing different queries on it. So the first was to look at how my data looks like. So I did a join from all sales data. Since I don't know what the product ID is, I don't know what the sales ID is, customer ID too is. Let's get the real names. That's the real name of the product, the real name of the customer, the name of the location, the state, the country, and then other details. So doing that, from all sales data, I left join to products using the similar key in both of them, which is product ID. Then left join again to location, in which the similar ID there is location ID, and then to customer. So in this join, what it will give me? It will give me all my data, all my rows in all sales data, and then give me matching rows in products table, in location table, and in customer table. So doing that, and since I've already run my select statement to give me just product name, customer name, and all this, it won't give me the whole table. It just give me what I want, which is this here. So with this, I know that, okay, Michael Lewis is a customer here, and he bought products 30 and is from Palde, California, Los Angeles County, and this is the other information. So now to get more metrics on this, to get a summary, I can then use my group by. So I can do a group by customer name, and then I'll get an aggregation of each customer. And okay, let's do it this way. Where is it? Okay, let's do it this way. Okay, I think I'm making a mistake somewhere. Okay. Yes, this wanted to add. Okay, since we know that this is still incomplete, it bought quantity for four products of product 30 at the price of 1,848. So we see it would be nice to get an extra column that will tell us the total sum of the products he has bought. So
Okay, Daniel, wait.
okay,
Did you do this alone, or everybody contributed to it?
we contributed to it. Actually, we did it yesterday during the weekend, over the weekend also. We did it together.
So everybody understood what was done here.
Let me leave
Yes,
everybody
ma'am.
to answer.
Okay. Go.
Okay. Will somebody like to explain further? So, or I
No,
should just go
go,
ahead.
go, go,
Okay.
go. Go back to the beginning.
Okay. So database, use specify using database.
Okay, so did you create the table using the formula here? Or you imported?
No, we imported from Excel.
From Excel.
Yes, we imported from Excel.
Okay.
But we first tried this first just to get data type how it looks like. So we did this first. But knowing that it might take time to write this query for all the tables, so we just did an import. But knowing with this is how our table looks like. This is the schema of how our table will look like.
Sunday.
Yes, ma'am.
It's Sunday there. All right.
Yes, I am.
Okay, please explain the two data creation processes that you used in this script.
Okay, I used a different method actually. So I don't know.
Were you a part of this script? Were you a part of this project? Were you there?
Yes, I was there, but
So explain what was done.
okay, ma'am.
The creation of the table. So from my understanding, there are two ways you create a table. First using the formula and secondly using direct import. So
Okay.
explain the two processes.
Okay. All right. So the first process he used for the 2020 sales is that he actually went to to the Excel sheet so that he can know the kind of the format of the this other ID. Now for the Excel sheet, there's nothing like underscore there, and I think some were okay. They were in upper cases, so we actually changed it to lower cases. Then we use
Why did you change it to lower cases?
Number one, even if it the only thing is that if you don't put this underscore there, if you don't join them, if you don't match them together like this, there might be error in your data set. Actually, you might SQL will not recognize this particular. It won't recognize it as a column. So that's why we have to do it like this.
Okay.
Okay, so
SQL will recognize it as a column even without an underscore. If you name the data type accurately, if you give the data type accurate naming, underscore or no underscore, your column will be created. Caps lock or small caps,
It will still be created.
big
Yes.
caps or your column will still be created.
but what about if we now say other ID space, other space ID?
Other one?
Like there's no underscore, then we now say on other space ID.
Your column will still be created.
Okay. Thank
Can
you.
I step in? Can I step in? Hello, ma.
But will you be able to follow
Hello, ma.
when you are using?
I'm with you.
Yeah, the reason why we used small letters was just for data presentation.
Okay.
That was just the reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so we use other ID as our primary key in order for if actually we want to reference other table like because we want to join some other table with it. So in case we want to do that, so we are using other ID because it is unique. It doesn't have duplicate or repetition. So that's why we are using that as our primary key. And it contains we use varchar, then we have the product ID using varchar also, and we have quantity we are using integer, and price also because they are numbers, so we are using integers for those integer as data type for these ones. And purchase date is actually a date format, is a date data type, so that's why we are using the date format for this. So if we are going to use a query, then after doing this, we can create the table, then we show the output, then we can now import straight away from Excel.
Okay.
So for the second one, Daniel, please go down.
Is it okay like this?
Let me see.
Is it okay like this?
All right, don't worry, don't worry. So for the second one, if actually want to import using the second method, which is the Excel method, so the only thing is just to open our Excel sheet, then we'll go to data, then we'll see the SQL add-in, then we'll see when we click on the schema that we are going to be using, that's the database that we use in creating this OGAT. We see it when we open it on our Excel sheet. We will see it, then we can now see export data. Okay, thank you very much. You will see the export Excel data to a new table. So when you click on that, it will, okay, you have to select the sheet, you have to select all, then it opens. When you now export, it opens a new page whereby you now use existing key, because existing column, which is, because if we use add a primary column, it will create another primary key for us, but we are using other ID, so we have to use existing key. So after doing that, checking that everything has been entered, then we can now press export. Sorry, yeah, export data. So when we export this data and it's successful, then we can now go to our SQL then to refresh our schema. Then we now see our table.
Okay, thank you. All right. Oluwatobi Aderiji, what is the use of foreign key and references? Hello?
Hello, ma.
Okay. So what is the use of foreign keys and references in relation to this table that was created?
I did not really understand that part, but according to what I understood, it's just basically to keep the integrity of the table, so you don't get to add other things to the table, you don't get to tamper with the table, and then it helps you link the tables together, just linking tables together. Yes.
Okay. Esther, foreign key and references.
Okay, thank you, ma. The foreign key basically is a column that references. Okay, foreign key will always be on the child table. So foreign key is a column on the child table that references another column on the parent table. So the foreign key in reference to the parent table must also be a unique column on the child table. So basically, like she said, it's just to keep the integrity of the data, because without it also, we found out that the joins still work without it. So it's just to keep the integrity of the table and just to show the connections. Basically, I think that's what I understood. Hello, ma.
Okay. So basically, it's to keep integrity of our data for data security, and then to be sure that, okay, this is your data, there's no compromise on the data. Okay. All right, so what else? Daniel, scroll down. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this place you did relationship between tables using inner joins. So what did you do there? You joined the total table, the total sales table, 28, the total sales table with the individual. Let me use Esther's word. Parent table to child table. Is that what you do?
Yes.
All sales. Okay, you joined all sales to products, to location, to customers. Okay, good. All right, go down. Go down. There's something again nice. So I'll keep going on.
This is the end of the script, man.
Eh? So that's all you people did in 1 week.
Well, we're looking at exploring the data more with other visualization tools.
Okay.
Yes, ma.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Well,
So from this from this task you did, so I'm talking to everybody now. From this task you did, it is clear that you can't learn everything in class. You can't learn everything at a go. Okay? There will definitely be, like I said before, there are lots and lots of things you're going to learn on the job. And if you don't get your hands dirty, if you don't get yourself engaged, some of these things you really will not know them. And we see new things every day, new commands, new structure, updates to existing data structures, data types and all. And you discover a lot of things that even your data types, your commands can do while you're working, while you're on the job. Okay, so I want to encourage you, don't just keep the data. Those data sets, these data are actually information that could make up a company's data. Okay, and you can do a lot and lot from this data. So please don't just keep it and don't wait till you have to do it in the class to get your hands, or don't wait for others. Once in a while when you have free time, just open the SQL, just practice, do a lot of things around different data sets, around different tables, do a lot of joins, a lot of scripting and all of that. And that way, you are going to develop yourself better, okay? So I want to encourage you, don't just keep the data, keep working, keep doing things, and with time, you get to be a professional. Daniel is a professional. I don't know what he's doing in this class. Anyway, hello?
ma.
Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you.
Yes, ma. We can hear you, ma.
Okay. So, all right. So let's go on to what we have for today. Oh no, our time is fast. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, let me share this document with people so that I wanted to share it. I don't know why. How I forgot to send it. So I hope we'll be able to finish what's planned for today, but if not, if we can't finish it today, we'll continue for more stuff. Okay? Continue for more about stuff. Okay, so when you get my email, let me.
I've gotten your mail.
I've received.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, so let's start. All right, so we are going into writing advanced queries in SQL. So the good thing is we've been able to establish that we now have a basic understanding. We have an understanding of the basics in SQL. So let's go to a little bit advanced SQL, and which you'll be using a whole lot. So in writing advanced queries, when you're writing advanced queries, we talk about something like nested queries. Okay, we talk about nested queries. We talk about subqueries, and then we talk about intersect set operations, where you have intersect, you have minus, you have unions, and all of that. So we're going to look into them one after the other. Hopefully we'll be able to finish that, and then we'll also be able to talk about user access management as well. Okay, so then we also have queries like case statements, writing case statements in our queries. Okay, so we have a whole lot of advanced. So technically, it's not like it is a more complex query. It is not like you have, in mathematics, when you say advanced mathematics, it's like a whole new world of mathematics entirely. But it's not like that here. It's like a build up of what you want to do, what you already know, the basics. So usually when you're writing query, you start from select, then you start script. But basically, the fundamental still remains that you need to understand what you want to do, understand where you're going to, and then that will help you in building your queries. So, however, in building queries, writing advanced or more advanced queries, you can see just one script for a single that will just give you a single output, going as far as 100 lines of script, 200 lines of script, that will just bring a single output. You can write some queries, advanced queries, and it will keep running and running and running for 24 hours. 48 hours, and some 3 days, after 3 days the output will come. Not because there are no simpler ways to do it to make it faster or ways to optimize it, but what you want is what determines what your query will look like, and then your output. All right, so basic operators that you use when you are building up script and writing more advanced scripts, you use operators like, you use exist. We talked about the operators before. But something
My voice is breaking.
like
But
operators.
that's the only
So sorry for
Yeah, my
that.
Same here.
I want to
we can't hear you properly now.
Hello, ma. We can't hear you properly. Your voice is breaking up.
emphasize the like operator.
Hello, I can't hear anything again. Hello?
Yeah, marvelous. I can hear
Hello,
you.
yeah. Cameras, can you
Okay.
hear
I think. Sorry, guys. Quick
Okay.
question, please.
Okay. Thank you.
So, quick question, please. I guys please listen, oh, please. So, I don't have plugin on my own SQL. So, I did importing directly from SQL from the schema side. If you understand what I mean. So now, how can I is it possible for me to indicate foreign key while importing? No, I'll just have to state it and then show the reference.
You can indicate why importing. So all you need to do is before you import, while creating your table, after you've done all this, or you could just after you create the table, after you sorry, while you're writing your query, after you specify the column, data type, then you can now put in front foreign references. You can put foreign key in front of it, and then below your table, you put something like
So I just have to type it out. I was saying importing the table.
Hello?
Hi, Ma.
yes, ma.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, I can hear you, ma.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, ma. We can hear you, ma.
Yes, ma'am. You can hear you.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
We can hear you, ma.
I can hear you
Hello,
now.
can you hear me?
Yes, ma.
Okay, good. I can hear you now. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
ma.
anyone hear me?
Yes,
All
yes, ma.
right, thank you.
Yes,
So
please.
sorry, my network decided to do anyhow. I hope it doesn't happen again because it's still the same network. Okay, so like I was saying that I want to emphasize the like operators because we'll be using it in different ways. Okay, so you might have a column that have uh, different. Okay, let me use. Okay, so let's say you have a column that have narrations or like a log file. So let's say you have something like transactions, or you have something like charges, but you don't want you don't want the customers that have charges. You want only the one that have charge. Or you have locations that has you have tables, columns that have locations like Lagos Island, Lagos Mainland. However, what you want is everybody in Lagos, whether Lagos Island or Lagos Mainland. How are you going to pick those customers from? How are you going to pick those customers from the column? Okay. Yes, you're going to use the like button. But if you use like, oh, you have Lagos Island, you have Lagos Island. You can as well use like Lagos Island and like Lagos Island. But instead of doing that, instead of doing multiple likes, multiple lines of queries in that aspect, you can just filter it with the like column using the percentage sign. So how do you impute? So there are two ways you can use the like column. You can use the percentage sign or the underscore. The percentage sign represents 0, 1, or multiple characters, while the underscore represents a single character. So normally when you want to use like, you say
Just
select.
share your screen.
Pardon?
I can't see your screen
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, can you see now?
Not yet.
Hello?
Not yet, but I think it's loading.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think that.
There are two ways to use the like with the percentage sign or with the underscore sign. So normally when you want to use like, you say select your columns from your table where column like, where this, then like. So in that like, when you want to now put in the operator or the pattern, you say like. Then if you use where column like, and you have your pattern before, if you put your pattern before the percent sign, that means you are finding values that start with that. So let's say, for example, you in a column where you have Lagos Island, Lagos mainland, for example, and you want to pick customers in Lagos, whether Lagos Island or Lagos inland, and you are sure that what starts it is Lagos, then you say then this first one will fit in. You put Lagos, then you put the percent after the Lagos. It's going to give you the values of everybody that has their locations as Lagos and the start point is Lagos. Then if you use the percent first before the pattern, it's going to give you all the customers that have their values ending with the pattern. So let's say, for example, you have a column that has something like, okay, you have a name column that has first name, you have a name column that has, or a location column, countries, let's say for example, in that sales data that you have countries like states in Canada, and then they now put it in a way that Canada ends it. So let's say you have, or maybe let's say Nigeria, you have Lagos, Nigeria, Abuja, Nigeria, Abeokuta, Nigeria, but you don't want to bring it out by individual, or you don't want to start writing something Nigeria. You just use the percent sign before Nigeria. It's going to return all the columns that has Nigeria as the last sign. Okay. Then we also have using the percent sign before and after. I personally use that a lot, before and after. Why? Because sometimes you think those columns are clean. So to avoid having data, having output that is not totally correct. Okay, to avoid having outputs that is not totally correct, I just use the first and the last percentage. So let's say you have a charges column that have charge, you have in the charge column, you have some that are written as charges, you have some written as charge. However, there are some that there's a space before them. Let's say you have charge, but while inputting the data, while computing the data, there's a space before some. The space will not show. You'll see charge, but the space in it will not show. Then sometimes there will be space after. So using this percentage will help you get the absolute value. So using the percentage before and after gives values that have n in any position. So whichever position what you're looking for is, the moment you use the percent before and the percent after, it searches for that particular word in whichever position in the column it is, it brings it out for you. Then we also have using the underscore plus the percent sign. So if you use the underscore before your value or before your pattern, then you are returning the columns that have your pattern in the second position. So let's say you have something like male, or you have male column and female column, and then you use underscore male percent. It's going to give only, sorry guys. So it's going to give the values that have that your word in the second position. Okay. So let's say then let's say you use your pattern first, then the underscore after the percent, another underscore percent. That's a little bit complex. However, it will give you any value that starts with D and are at least 3 characters in length. Then if you have you use the percentage in between 2 words, okay, in between 2 words, it gives only the values that start and end with that. So let's say I want charges, okay? I want people that has charges in a charge column. If I do C percentage S, it's going to give me all the words that start with C and end with S. Okay, so you'll be using this a lot when you're writing a more advanced or a more complex queries. Okay, then we have the exist operator. We've talked about that before. We talked about the all, the no, the any. So I just want us to re-emphasize it and go over it again. So the exist operator is used to test if a record exists or not. The all operator is used with a where having clause, and then the any operator is used with where having clause to return. So basically, these operators are used to return. So they help in further filtering of your data. Okay, so let's now go into what I call nested query. So what is a nested query? So some people will say query in query. Okay, who will say query in query? In fact, most of the time you hear something like query in query and you'll be wondering, what's query in query? So it's called nested queries. So nested queries are queries that have an outer query and an inner subquery. The subquery is a query which is nested within another query. So this is an example of a nested query where you have a first select statement and then using your where clause or and to filter down. So it is not only where you can use in writing in nested queries, you can as well use the where. So let's say you have city. So let's say, for example, you want students, parents, age from Lagos residents, where city in Lagos Island. Then you can now say and area in, you now enter another query, open another bracket, say maybe you have another table that contains the area information. So you now open another query and say area, where an area in, then you now write the select statement to select the areas you want. Okay, So you'll be doing a lot of query and query when you are doing, if you are doing analytics core, whether data engineering or data analytics, you'll be doing a lot of nested queries. Okay, so we also have the set operations. So there are three major sets. We have the union, the intersect, then the set difference. So looking at the image, are you with me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So looking at the image here, blow it up. Okay, so looking at this image, so we have union, we have intersect. So union is, say you have 2 or 3 tables, you can use the union function and union the content of the 2 tables together or the 3 tables together. You did union in the script Daniel showed earlier on, am I right? Daniel, you had union, you used union in the script you shared earlier, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So union helps to bring the information in all the tables together without leaving anything behind. It adds up everything together. However, in union, there's a probability that you have duplicate records, especially when there is no data that distinctively separates one of the columns. So for example, in the data you unioned, you have 20 sales data, 2019 data, 2020 sales data. However, the column, the date column that makes the difference, it's the same row number, the same column name. The 3 tables has the same column names. However, the content of the date is different. So if you union those kind of tables, you will not likely have duplicates. But in a situation whereby you union 2 tables that does not have columns that distinctively separate it, you are going to have duplicates. So in that situation where you have duplicates, you now do a select. When you want to select the content of the new table you unioned or the output, you select distinct so that you don't have repeated data. Do you get that?
Sorry, ma'am.
Go on.
What if a customer starts twice in one day?
Pardon?
What if a particular customer purchased or made that twice in a particular date?
I didn't get you.
The example you're trying to give, the graduatory table, I'm just saying, you were saying that the date is the unique column there. So I was saying that what if a particular customer made a purchase, like made an order twice in a day, so it was going to appear twice?
If you make an order twice in a day, no. So that data I shared is an aggregated data. So it has already put together each day for the total. It has already summed the total together for the day. Okay. So if a customer makes sales 2 times, it's going to record the customer and 2 sales, not 1 for today and then another 1 for today. So it's going to record the customer name once. However, you might have some data that is not clean. The data I shared is already a clean data. But in case you have data that is not clean, you might have, especially when you are working with timestamp, when the data has a timestamp, then that's a probability of having multiple records for a customer. So let's say, for example, if you, in banking now, let's say you do a transfer in the morning, you make another transfer by 12, you make another transfer by 5, you make another transfer by 8 p.m. That's 4 transfers in a day. Everything is going to enter the database 1 by 1. However, at the end of the day, you can now have an aggregated data table that now says, okay, Esther made 4 transfers today. You understand? But there will be a database that captures the data one by one per transaction. You understand? But when you're not talking about, okay, this is the daily data, it now becomes an aggregated data that now records and sums up everything together. So you now have something like, okay, count of transaction. Okay, this is the customer. Esther is the customer. How many transactions did she do? 4 transactions. How much is the total transaction she did? Okay, 100,000. So that has aggregated all the daily transactions into one. But that will be in another table that fits from the major table. So that way you have a cleaner data for the day. But the data in the sales data I shared is already a clean data. So you will not likely have that. Do you get that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so then intersect. So like say for example you want to look at, okay, you have 2018 data, 2019 data, 2020 data. Say you want to say, okay, how many salespersons made sales in 2018 and also made sales in 2019. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, ma'am.
Ma, can hear
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
ma.
Okay.
Can hear you, ma.
Okay, good. So like I said, that if you do an intersect, it's going to give you the customer that made sales during the 2 periods only. Other customers will not be captured. However, you can as well do a minus. Okay, you can as well do, there's also a minus operation. You can do a minus operation. Say you now say, okay, out of the customers in 2019, you want to remove the ones that did sales in 2018. So you want to have only the people that did sales, in 2019 only, and remove the people that did 2018. So that way you use the minus operation to remove those customers. Once you use the minus operation, it removes the customers from the data set. Please give me a minute. Let me attend to this lady. Please. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so then that takes us to writing case statements in SQL. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear you, ma'am?
Okay. So then we now go to writing case statements. So case statements, okay, is also a way of handling data. So instead of writing, normally when writing queries, you can do if, then, else, and all of that in logic. So instead of doing that, you just use a case statement in SQL. So once you do the case statement, it gives you the output you desire. So in using a case statement, you have something like select. Okay, so let's say, for example, in the 2020, or so now you have all sales table. So let's say, for example, from the all sales table, you want total sales. That's the total sales value or the total sales amount, and then you now want to group it by band. Like you want customers that, okay, the amount of sales for each customer differs. So let's say you now want to group it, okay, how many customers did below 1,000, how many salesperson sold below 1,000 naira, how many sold between.
See, you know it's not to run in September. It should
So how many sold between 1,000 and 5,000? How many sold between 5,000 and 10,000? How many sold above 10,000 dollars or naira? So that way, instead of using, okay, if sales equals to this, then this, else clinical. So instead of using that kind of logic, we just use a case statement, which is similar to that kind of logic. So the basic syntax in using a case statement is saying case, when, then the condition, and then the result. And then you end it with, just like in logic, you have else, and then you end it with end. Then if you want it to show in another column, you also indicate the column name so it comes out. So there are two ways of writing case statement in MySQL. In Oracle SQL is a little different from SQL, just a little difference. So there are two ways of writing in MySQL. So the first one is to take the take the case value and match it with the statement list. And the second way is use a search condition to execute the statement list. So this is it. So let's say, for example, in the sales table, in the all sales table, we want to write a case. We want, okay, salesperson ID, we want the country, then we want the total sales, that's the amount of sales. So if I want to use the first one using the variable, I will say case, so I'm going to say, I've been writing the select statement, select, so okay, let me say, sorry, I'm doing this on my head. I don't have that data. But let me say select salesperson, select comma country, comma case. Then okay, comma case, then total sales, when, then I put in the value. So let's say my value is so this one will not work here. So that one we'll do in search condition. So let's say we want to use male and female. Let's say the salesperson, we want to know whether the salesperson is a male or is a female. Then, but we want to represent the name and female column in another way. Then we say, okay, say case gender when M, or when male, then M, when female, then F. Else, then you put your statement. Maybe you want else other gender, or else others, or else O. Okay, so this one works best when you're working with integers, or you're working with values, just a single value case statement. But when you now want to have something like the one I described earlier, that you want to case the amount, that's when you now say, okay, case when amount equals, or amount less than 1,000, then you name it maybe below 1,000. Then when amount between 10,001 and 50,000, then this. Else above 100,000. So else will capture all the other condition, all the other customers that the conditions you have listed did not cover. So we'll put all of them in. It's going to put all of them in that statement list. Then you end it and put the name of the column you want it to be. So when you're ending, you can say end, then you put the column name. Maybe column name will now be I'm a sales bank. Okay, so you say end sales bank. So that way you have case. However, in writing a case statement, you need to be very careful the way you order your conditions, because the way you order your conditions is the way your output will come out. So you have to be very careful in ordering your condition. Do you get that? Any question on the case statement? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Okay, any question on the case before we go into pivot? Okay, so let me say.
Hello.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You mentioned just now that when using the case statement that we should be careful how we order the conditions. So I don't know how then should the ordering be done. Is it that there is a particular way we order the conditions or what?
So the way you order your condition depends on the way you want your output to look like. So if you want your output to be ordered like 1, 2, 3, you order your condition 1, 2, 3. If you don't want, if you want your condition to come out 1, 2, 3, and you do 3, 1, 2, it's going to come out 3, 1, 2. So it's just a case of as you lay your bed, so you lie on it. So you need to order in the right manner, because so it's a conditional statement. So I say when amount is below 1,000, then give me this. So it's going to look for all the customers that have amount below 1,000.
Excuse me, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I'm with you.
Are you working on your SQL as you're speaking at this moment?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I thought you were. I was hearing taps, so I wanted you to share your screen. But don't worry, it's fine. Go ahead.
No, I'm not working on SQL. Okay, so let's do this. Daniel, share your screen again, then do a case statement on the else table so that we'll have a pictorial understanding of writing the case statement.
Okay, ma'am. Let me share my screen. Okay, can we see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Using this, what case scenario can we use?
Open the all sales table. Let me see.
Okay. Okay. So this is your sales table.
Okay, good. So let's say price. So case the price. Give me price below 100, price between 101 and 500, price between 501 and 1000, then price above 1000.
In case when price below below 100
Okay.
and let's return as low or not expensive. Let's say cheap. Price is above 100. Less than 1,000. Expensive. Okay. Oh no. Price above 1,000. Then let's return 1,000 expensive.
Shouldn't you change that sign?
Which?
Be greater than, not less than.
Sorry?
It should be greater than, not less than.
Oh,
That's the
sorry.
difference.
Greater than. Yes. Greater than inexpensive. For else statement here, boy. Okay, there's an error somewhere.
Okay.
I think there's an error somewhere.
I think on line 63, you need to come on.
What did you say?
Daniel.
Yes,
After
ma.
the end, it's just supposed to be a comma after the end. On 63, the command on 63.
Okay. Yes, ma. There's something wrong with our case statement.
Okay, so the first thing from the beginning,
Yes.
you won't use end in each case.
Okay, yes, in each case. Okay.
Then secondly, you are going to use end at the end of your case statement after the else. So the else, you have to name the else as well. And then you won't put comma.
Now you want to play.
Good.
You not putting your head.
However, this your case statement.
Yes,
When
ma.
I said ordering in the right manner. So this your case
Okay.
statement. First, we will have duplicate values because you
Yes.
have 100 and you have, okay, less than 100, then you have 100 and 1000, then you have
1000.
greater than 1000. So this 1000, we have duplicate values. So when you're working with figures like this, you need to be careful not to have duplicate values. So once you have 1000, you want to say, okay, greater than 1000 will return, okay, oh, no duplicate values the way it is now. So greater than 1000, you didn't put equal to. Assuming you put equal to and there's 1000 here, then you have duplicate value. But leave it this way it is. However,
Okay.
you need to remove the less than and greater than sign in the
Then
second statement.
statement. Okay, yes. Since I put a between already. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's okay. So do what do we have? The product ID, right?
Yes, ma.
Okay.
Customer ID. And then I think it should be okay like this.
Okay. But you would like to group it.
Okay.
Okay, because we now have something like, okay, the condition, okay, you might not want to group it. Anyway, you have expensive, so you want to see, so this one now is showing us each customer, what is their price condition, or we can say their price range. You understand?
Yes, ma.
So you can say their price range. Okay, this one is expensive, oh, this customer is expensive. So if you now decide to now group by the case, it will now give you the customers that, if you now decide to group by the case statement, it will now give you the customers that are, or let's say you are now doing a count. How many customers are in product ID? How many customers are here? How many customers? Okay, so do a count and then group by the case. So that is the count of customers. Okay, so we now have 6,114 customers are expensive, 4,500 are fairly expensive, and 216 are cheap. The cheap customers are not much. So does that explain, does that give a clearer understanding of writing a case statement?
Yes, my does.
Okay, good. So however, you can have more than one case statement in a query. Okay, you might have, like the way you have price condition, you can decide to do another case statement for another column, another case statement. So you can have more than one case statement in a query. However, you need to be very careful when you are doing the case statement. Okay, so that takes us to pivot. Any query, comments, questions, further questions? Additions? Okay, so we can go ahead.
Yes, ma. Yes, so. Nobody has any question.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go to pivots. I hope we can finish this today. Okay, so we'll go to pivots. Are you okay? Let me share my screen. Sorry about that. Okay, so pivot. So you know the way pivot works in Excel, same way we can have pivots in SQL. So pivot is simply converting column to multiple columns. The way you have pivot, you can unpivot in SQL as well. So you can do a pivot, you can unpivot the pivot. Okay, so how do you do pivot? Okay, pivot is used to rotate the table value by converting the unique values of a single column to multiple columns. It is used to rotate the rows to columns and runs aggregations when required in the column. You can as well use order by clause to sort the value either in the ascending or descending order. So how do you do a pivot? To create a pivot, the first thing is you know the columns you want to pivot. Okay, you know the columns you want to pivot. Then you now select a source table. Then you apply the pivot operator using the aggregate function, and then you mention the pivot values. So the first thing is you select the columns for pivoting. How many columns do we want to pivot? Then we now do, so you can pivot as many columns. Okay, so let's say, Daniel, that case statement you did just now,
Okay.
so we'll be pivoting it. So the case statement without the group and without the order by, the very first one that returned all the values.
Okay, ma.
Sorry, share your screen again.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Okay, good. So that case statement, remove the counts. Let's not have counts. You know the way it was before. Let's
Yes.
not have counts. Just do the product ID, the customer. No, do product ID, not customer ID, just product ID,
Okay.
then price, and then the case.
Okay.
So product ID, price, and case. So we'll be pivoting that output very soon.
Okay, ma.
Okay. Okay, so let's come back here. So the first thing is to select the columns we want to pivot. Then from the query that produces the data, then you name the query and then insert the pivot. So Daniel, do select. Okay, so the first thing is we want to name you want to select a non-pivoted column name. Okay, so say select customer ID. Is it customer ID we use or product ID?
It's product ID we use. Product ID.
So say select product ID, then comma.
Okay.
Then open a square bracket.
Okay.
Then put in the chip, comma.
Okay.
So use the output of the case as column, the cheap, the expensive, and very expensive.
Okay, ma. Should I share my screen? Well, actually, when we're done, I'll share. Okay. Okay, ma.
Okay. So from okay, no, separate box column for each of them.
Okay, for each of them. Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I've done the pivoting before in SQL. Okay.
Separate box columns. No need to. You don't put them inside. Don't put it.
Quotation marks.
Don't put the quotation. Yes. Because they are going to now be the column headers. So okay, so pivot is you are converting columns to rows.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the content of the way pivot is in Excel, that
Yes.
the content you now want to bring it out like you want to transpose, like you want to transpose the data. Yes. So you have the new column header, so that is fine. Then we now say remove the comma from the after the expensive. Then we now say have from open bracket and put that query inside the bracket.
This all product
the old query.
Okay.
No, the old query we had before. The old select product ID. Yes. So from that's our query that produces the data. You can name the table. So let's name it as product price. Name it as product underscore price. Okay. Then now say pivot. So now we want to insert the pivot. However, whether you name it or you don't name it, whether I put the alias or you don't put the alias, your pivot will run. But sometimes it's actually good to put the pivot, put the alias for proper. Okay, so sometimes it's good to put in the alias. Please, is everybody carried along? Are we having an understanding? Hello?
Ma, I'm lost though.
Okay. So where so that we can find you? Hello?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to understand why we had to duplicate this and the case. I don't know. But why we have to duplicate it, the when price is less than 100 and cheap, and when price is between 100 and 1,000, they're fairly expensive. I'm trying to make sense of that.
Okay. We didn't duplicate the case. What we are doing is, okay, is it on the pivot you're talking about or the case statement? When we did the case statement?
The pivot map.
The pivot. Okay, so the pivot we didn't duplicate. Okay, we are still writing the pivot. We're not done with the pivot yet. So there's no duplication in the pivot. Oh, Daniel has put, oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So Daniel.
Yes, ma.
Remove the group by from after the all sales. No, leave the first case. So from all sales, remove the group by. Then close the select bracket, the select statement bracket.
Yes.
That is closed. Okay. As product price. So do enter before the pivot so that they will see where we are putting the pivot.
Okay.
So now we want to put in the pivot. We have not put in the pivot. So now we want to pivot it. So to now pivot, so the question is, which column do we want to pivot? So we are pivoting our, the column we are pivoting is the price condition. Okay, so you now do pivot price condition. So you open brackets for the price condition.
Square brackets or
normal bracket. So open brackets. So the price condition we want, do we want the average or the sum of the price condition? So let's do sum. So say, before the price condition, put a square bracket, say sum price condition. No, the sum alone is no. So close the square bracket after the sum.
Okay.
Then put the price condition in a separate column on its own.
Okay.
No, open another bracket for the price condition. Good.
I should close slide. Okay.
So you know
the first bracket.
The pivot bracket is still open.
Yes.
Good. So we'll leave that. So then pull for then now list out the cheap, fairly expensive, and expensive. So you can just copy it and paste it. So that's the column name of the columns that will now become the column header.
Okay, well.
Oh, sorry. The column name. The column name. So what we have is the column name. So what's the column name for product price? So for product price, then on. Are you getting it? So we are pivoting. What we are doing is we are pivoting sum of price for.
Okay.
We are pivoting sum of price for price condition in cheap, fairly, expensive, and expensive. Okay. Let me see what Daniel is doing.
I've not done anything. I'm waiting for you to.
So pivot. Hold on.
Okay. Now select query from.
So we are pivoting.
Okay.
We are pivoting price. We are pivoting price for price condition in cheap, fairly expensive, and expensive. So sorry, the first one is pivot sum of price, not price condition, sum of price.
Okay.
Sum of price, good. For price condition.
So I should change this to price condition.
Yes, for price condition, then in these three headers.
Okay.
So you put price condition in a box column. Then the three headers also in box columns.
In one single box column.
No, separate box column. Just the way you did
Okay.
up. Just the way you did it up.
Okay.
Then you close the pivot.
Okay. I've closed the pivot already. But I'm still getting an error here.
Where is that?
I'm still getting an error here. So I don't know. It seems I'm not done something.
You put them in. Put the three in a separate column, a separate bracket. Let me see. Then after in, open a bracket before the box bracket.
Like this.
Good. So close that and then close the pivot.
Okay. I've done that.
Yeah, remove the price and the other ones after that. Don't put a comma after the pivot.
Okay.
The pivot
So I should remove this. Okay, I should remove those these other ones after. Is this it, man?
Yes, that's it. So when you want to do a pivot, that is the way, that is the representation of the pivot. So you write your script, then you pivot. So then you pivot the outcome from the select statement. Okay, so let's come back to our document. So I put an example here for us to see in the next slide. And the purpose of this, okay, so this example shows a data table and then doing a pivot on this data table and what the outcome will look like. Okay, so the purpose of this is, so that script you just finished writing, Daniel.
Okay, ma.
If you want to so going by this example, writing the pivot, creating the pivot will give us this output. So what does this pivot say? I'm pivoting customer ID with average cost. Okay, that's what this pivot in this example. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma. I can see your screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this example here that I have here, just the way we have it, name pivoted, non-pivoted column, then the first columns from the query, from, then now insert the pivot. Just that was done here. We have the first thing is to give the name of the unpivoted column. Then the columns that will be the new header, just like we have there that we used cheap, very expensive, and expensive. Then from that is our select statement that we also use there. Then we now insert the pivot. So the pivot used here is average cost. So then we now use average cost for customer ID. Don't forget that the content of the customer ID, just that's the way we have the content of the price condition is. So that is what we want to use as the new column. So we have cheap, we had cheap, expensive, and very expensive there. Just the same way we have 11, 22, 33 here. So we now say average cost for customer ID in the new column we want to have. Then as pivot table, and then we have this output. Do you get that? So I put in this example for us to see what the table looks like before, then when you run a pivot and what the output is going to be. Because on my SQL, you can't run a pivot. There are versions of Oracle that pivot works on. Okay. So coming, I have that somewhere here. Okay, so look at this. Okay, so pivot works on Oracle 12c, Oracle 11g, Oracle 10g, and Oracle 9g. MySQL is a lower version of Oracle, so it doesn't work on it. Okay. However, this example shows, so in case you are working on a higher version of Oracle SQL or on a licensed MySQL version of MySQL, you will be able to do a pivot. But with this particular MySQL, you can't do a pivot. That is why the scripts Daniel wrote, the pivot script that we wrote out, you will notice that it won't go. But I wanted us to write it out so that we can see how it is done, and take note of the brackets, the square brackets, and the regular brackets, how they were used. Okay. So, but we also have the example of a pivot that was done in this document so that we can see and use it for future reference. Okay. So then that takes us to, then we have on pivot. However, our time is up. So we'll start from on pivot next class, or let me just run through the on pivot so that we go to the code functions from next class. Okay, so do we understand the pivots, using pivots in SQL? Is it clear?
To some extent.
To some extent, no.
Okay, but really when you go through, okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Ma. So I noticed that we used the square brackets and the regular bracket, and you also said that we should also be aware of how it was used. So I want to know what's the implication of, when do we use a square bracket and when do we use the regular bracket? What's the implication?
So you use a square bracket to connote the columns that will now be the new header, like the new column header. That's when you use the square brackets. So the square bracket is the one that identifies the new column header.
I have a question, Suma.
When you use a regular bracket in place of a square bracket, it might return error.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So I also noticed that we put the sum function in a square bracket. I don't know if that was a mistake. So I want to know why I don't know.
Okay, so the square bracket, because it's an aggregate function, okay, because it's an aggregate function first, and then it's an aggregate function that defines the column name, okay. So however, you can as well run, like this one here was done without putting the average inside a square bracket. You can as well run that without the column. You can run it, but however, when you are running it, just look at the output of what you're doing. Sometimes the good thing with SQL is that when you run it and something is not correct, it will give you. You understand? It will tell you, okay, this is the error. And you can as well check the error type you're getting, and then you'll be able to get a clearer understanding of the kind of error it is. But however, you can run the aggregate function without putting it in a square bracket. But sometimes, to avoid errors, you might want to put it, and it's not, you can run it without putting it. But this one was done without putting it. This one was done on SQL without putting it in a square bracket.
Okay,
So we also have, you're welcome. So we also have the on pivot. So the way we pivot, we can as well on pivot the table back. So it's just the same way we use the pivot function, we use on pivot as well. So if you want to do on pivot, the way we insert pivot into the query is the way we now put on pivot. So we on pivot also for and in, just the same way. So I've also put an example here for us to look at. So it's just the same modalities for pivot and on pivot. The only difference is instead of pivot, you use on pivot. Is that okay?
Okay, ma. I have a question, ma. Is there any way you can practice this pivoting?
Okay.
Like, is there maybe a free version, or maybe you can you do it online somewhere?
So there's no free version of Oracle SQL. There's no free version of Oracle SQL.
Okay, thank you, ma.
So that's the reason why we had to, because there's no free version of Oracle SQL, that's the reason why I had to use MySQL. Left to me, I would have loved to take this class. Initially, I said we're going to take this class using Oracle SQL, but because I understand that it is important that everybody gets carried along and it won't be just a theory class, and then maybe you'll just be looking at me doing what I'm doing. Okay, that's why I decided to use MySQL. But there's no free version of Oracle SQL. So from next class, we'll look at decode functions, and then we'll do procedures and functions on SQL. Okay. So I think we are good. Any question, any more question, any clarification before we close for today? Any addition? Hello?
Wow, we can hear you.
Okay, so should I take it as we are okay with the class and we understand it? So however, anytime you come, you have a reason to use functions, you have a reason to use pivots, you have a version of SQL, because I know very soon everybody would be engaged one thing or the other, one organization or the other. It might not be Octave, it might be somewhere else. When you get there, if you get to an organization that uses Oracle SQL, so the purpose of this class is not just for teaching you MySQL, it's for teaching SQL holistically. So whether you are doing MySQL or you are doing Oracle SQL or you are using PostgreSQL, whatever SQL tool you are using or you come across, you know what to do. Is that clear? So I've sent this document as well. I believe all of us must have gotten it by now. So please, let's go through it from time to time. Just read through. When you're working on something and you get stuck, you can reference it and then you take it from there.
Thank you very much, Ma. Because I've learned something totally different today.
Thank you for the class, Ma.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ma.
Ma.